Once you get logged into TransactionDesk itself, it will look just like this right when you get into the agent dashboard. Okay, so this will be the very first screen that you'll see right when you get into the system. One thing that I always suggest right when you get in is to head to the person icon here on the top right and to make sure you head over to your settings. This is just, if you've never logged in before, it's always a good idea to make sure to do this step. And that's to head here to preferences and to double check all of the information that's added in, things like your agent ID, making sure you have the right email, your phone number. All of the different items that you're going to see in here are used to make it so that it will create your signature within Authentisign once you send out those Authentisign items. So it's a good idea. Make sure you have everything in order. Another good idea, email signature. So this does confuse quite a few people. This is not going to be your best regards with your name. This is going to be more like if you want to add your certifications. I know quite a few agents, you work very hard to make it so that you can have your certifications. So this is where you would add those certifications in. Or maybe you have like a quote from history. There's so many different clever quotes from movies and histories that I see with agents. And so you can add that into the email signature. And then we even have an option for a little bit of branding. So you can jump in and be able to add in your photo to make it so that you can personalize your items as well. Heading back up to the agent dashboard here on the left-hand side. The agent dashboard could have all kinds of different items on here. For best results, go ahead and unlock the agent dashboard. And you're then going to be able to move items quite easily, just like this, just by left click and dragging. You can also select items here at the top. And so there's a couple different items that I usually will suggest. First is going to be our create transaction, because of course, when you get into the program, what's the first thing you're probably going to do? Probably going to create a transaction, right? Next, we have our create Authentisign packet. Always a good one to have in order. That makes it so you can even create Authentisign packets outside of a transaction. So if you want to use it for a couple personal items, if you just need to create a quick e-sign, Authentisign is right there. Contacts, already have this one on here. I'm going to minimize this one with this green triangle. I'm going to make that one smaller. There we go. If you just want to quickly add in a contact on the system, you may want to get that one added in. And then, the support information, you could drag this and put this right here, or you could always go to that question mark anytime that you want to get to our help resources. And we are at the very end going to make sure and jump over to those help resources as well. Next, if you want to keep track of your transactions, these green list view items, so blue items are action items, like create transaction or start an e-sign. These green items are going to be list view items, such as your transactions that you have created. I'm going to get rid of some of the noise on here real quick. Your recent Authentisign packets. This is a really good one to have there, because then you can keep track of all the different ones that have been sent out and where are they currently in their process. You can keep track of overdue tasks. You can take a look at your checklist. So we do have quite a few different options here. These are just a few of the options that I would highly suggest getting added onto your dashboard. So if you want to make your job a little bit easier, want to make it so that you can more quickly come in and get the work done that you want to get done, these items right here are the ones that I would suggest getting added onto your dashboard. And then go ahead and lock it up with the lock icon there in the top right. Moving over to our toolbar, if you ever wonder what an item is, you can either hover, or you can select what we lovingly refer to the pancakes in the top left-hand corner there. You're first going to see transactions. So this is where all of your transactions are housed. I know that's a terrible joke. It's got a little house icon on there. But now you're never going to forget, transactions are where the house icon, right? It's where they are housed. So all of your different transactions that you need, are going to be right here, the ones that you've created in the past, of course. But if you're new, you can always come in and start creating transactions right here as well. We're just going to create a training transaction. I'm going to call mine 123 training lane. If you haven't had a chance to create a template in the past, a template is a really great way to make it so that you can more quickly create your transactions, where you can automatically have particular paperwork like forms, particular documents, and particular checklist items onto your transaction. Now, you do have to create it yourself, but after you have it created, it's already going to be right there in the template, ready for you to be able to select. For today's training, I'm going to do a residential sale because I want to show off this MLS connection a little bit. So for those that don't know, for the system here,
No.
did someone mean to be unmuted? I don't know if you meant to be unmuted. Okay, no problem. So the MLS connection option here is going to allow you to be able to bring a listing over directly from the association itself. You just have to have that wonderful MLS number. If you are doing a list side, of course, in that circumstance, you're not going to have an MLS number because you just created this transaction, right? You don't have it in on the market just yet. Later on, you will get that number, but for now, you may not have that particular number. But if you're doing a purchase side like what I'm doing today, you can add in that MLS number. And then when you push create, it's going to be able to pull in that listing with all of those listing details, saving you a good amount of time there. So that's one thing about having the MLS connected and provide this as a member benefit is that you can bring in listings. I'm going to go ahead and just do select source. I wanted to show off that feature, but I know some of you are just starting fresh where you haven't added it to the market just yet. So I'm going to treat it as if it hasn't been added just yet, okay? Next, select what type of agent you are and choose to use the wizard. The wizard is a wonderful 5-step process that's going to take me through transaction creation. So first, it's going to have me add in my details. I'm just going to do 123 training lane. And you know what? To Rochester, New York. Sounds like a perfect place to be able to have a family, be able to buy a home, right? Go ahead and get the other details added in. You want to try to add in as many details as you possibly can. The more information that you include within the detail section here, the less that you're going to have to fill out on your form. But make sure and come in and add in every single detail that you can. Okay? Now I'm going to go to step 2, which are going to be my transaction dates. Things like, what's the list date? Hopefully I'm getting this property listed pretty quickly. Offer date, expiration date, right? Get all of that added in. Next, step 3 are going to be my contacts. This will automatically add you as the real estate agent on there. And so if you don't see that, though, there is an option in your settings that you just need to get turned on. But everybody, for the most part, should automatically appear as the agent. Next, we're going to go ahead and add in a couple more contacts. So I'll go to plus add, and I'm going to create a couple new transaction contacts. Just going to select buyer first. So I'm going to go ahead and put in Mr. Buyer. Add an email address. Just like the details within the transaction, I want to make sure and fill out as many details as I possibly can. The more information I include, the less that I need to include onto my forms that I'm going to have to be filling out later. And one thing I highly suggest is to add that to your address book. And that way you don't have to try to find that contact in the future. It's already going to be on there. So go ahead and add that to the address book. Go ahead and click save there. Go ahead and select plus add again. I got a Mr. Buyer. Can't forget Mrs. Buyer. Very happy couple. Been buying properties with me for a number of years. They never seem to sell any properties, though. Kind of an interesting group here. Of course, I'm being a little silly, tongue-in-cheek here, but I'm just getting another contact added in. One question I do get consistently, what if I'm working with a corporation or an LLC? In that circumstance, you're going to plug in the company name under first and last name, and then under preferred signature and preferred initials, you're going to plug in the actual person's name. So, you know what? If it's, upstate New York is amazing, you would add that under first and last name, and then it would be Mrs. Buyer under preferred signature, MB for preferred initials there. We'll go ahead and get that saved there. So I have my Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Of course, I could continue to add additional contacts, my attorneys, whatever inspectors I might be working with or connecting with. Of course, this is the lister. That's going to be an important one, right? But we'll go ahead and move on to step 4 here. If you have generalized contacts, people that you work with quite often, in your example, Michelle, you have a broker that you want to include on your transactions. There is a section on the left-hand side called Contacts. If you don't know where to find it, don't forget about the little pancakes. You can go here to Contacts and add contacts that you're going to work with every single time. So you see you got John Doe here. So when I go into my transaction, if John Doe was my broker, I just need to, in the Contacts section, add them as an existing contact. So I'd go in, pick John Doe, and click Add. And I can add them in as my broker or whatever type of contact I might be able to use. So if you have a particular appraiser, inspector, if you have your broker that you need to include on here, you can easily get them added in. Step 4 is to add in my forms. My forms are going to come directly from my association itself. And so my association actually has quite a few wonderful forms already added in. All I have to do is click on one of the folders to be able to bring in a form, or I could type it into the top here to be able to narrow down my list onto a particular folder form as well. So, so maybe I need some type of an agreement put together here. There's an all parties agreement that I may need to include. And so you'll then go through the process of just selecting which forms that you want to get added in. So they even have an all purchase related and all listings related folder to make your job quite a bit easier. Okay. So let me just take a quick look, get 1 or 2 added in. Maybe that one. Oh, why not? We'll get that one in there. We have the buyer side disclosure. So again, I'm just adding in a couple forms that I might need during my transaction process, okay? And you can add in just the ones that you're going to work with right this second, or you could add in every single form that you're going to need throughout this process. Whatever the circumstance is, you do have those forms available, so you can easily select them. They'll end up right here in the basket, and you can just click Add to be able to add all of them onto your form section. What's amazing about forms is that they take the details that you have filled out and they take the contact details and they automatically populate onto those forms. Plus, once we move to AuthentiSign, it's actually going to be able to auto-populate things like signatures and initials onto your forms automatically instead of you having to get it all added in yourself. We'll move on to step 5 here. Step 5 is going to allow me to be able to include documents. Maybe this person, they prefer to sign everything by hand. Perfectly understandable. You have those clients out there, they prefer the old good ink and paper there. I understand. Use that ink pen. Also, if you have documents that are coming from the association that you want to include, you have your property disclosures, lead-based paint, you want to get those included on here. I'm just going to grab, this is just an educational example. I understand this doesn't come from your association, but I'm going to grab this lead-based paint disclosure as an educational example. We're going to use that here in a bit once we jump into AuthentiSign. But we would go ahead and include whatever documents that we need, and then we'll push done. And that is the full, easy 5-step process for getting your transaction created. If you wanted to, at any point, you could head here to the wizard to go through that 5-step process again. Excellent. Just going to pause just for a second, make sure there's no questions. Not seeing any in the moment, and that's perfectly okay. Well, moving ahead here, we're going to go ahead and head here to the dashboard to make it so that we can continue to fill out this transaction. This dashboard here, again, just like the dashboard that we had at the very beginning, this is going to have things like start your e-sign. It's going to have things like you're uploading a new document on there. You can also unlock this to be able to add the desired widgets, remove the desired widgets off this dashboard as well. Also, you can adjust the title of the transaction. For example, when you're working with a buyer in the very beginning, you may not know which offer is going to go through just yet. So you could put just the buyer's name at the beginning and then change it to the address later. We usually suggest having it as the address. The reason why that you add the address there is that it's going to be easier to be able to tell which one is correct on there, which one is the one that you're working with currently, okay? Excellent. Here is the status of the listing. The hope is it's going to be going pending, right? That they're going to accept that offer. Email upload. Every single transaction has its own email address that's created. This is just to make it so if you wanted to, you could email documents directly into the transaction itself. You can also email conversations that you're having with the client. So if you have a full email thread of a conversation, you can email it to the transaction for it to be in the document section here. So that's under that envelope right here. And then the three little dots, the menu here. You can delete your transaction, you can apply a template, and then the import data feature. I wanted to mention that again, where you're going to be able to come in and be able to select your association. Let me do one quick refresh here real quick. Import data. There we go. I was wondering why the Greater Lansing, it was doing it for my login and not from Jennifer's login, who I'm just borrowing for this training. So you're going to grab your association and plug in that MLS number. And when I push import, it's then going to bring in the information into my details section, and even it's going to add some contacts. So I wanted to wait to get that added in, because I wanted to quickly show you how you can do that even after creating the transaction. So even if you waited to make it so that you can get that transaction in the system, once you, of course, get the seller, the lister there to sign the exclusive right, the listing contract, then you can still use that import data feature later. And you'll notice all the different details it plugs in for you. Quite a few different details, including even a photo of the listing. Next, under contacts, you'll also note that it did bring in some contacts like the listing agent, the escrow company, the listing brokerage. I borrowed a random listing, so nobody take this as like, oh, we picked their listing instead of mine. I just grabbed a random listing online from your region there. I'm actually going to be deleting some of these contacts because I don't want to accidentally send a contract out. I'm not trying to buy a property in Rochester, not in the middle of January, okay? We got enough ice and snow here. So I'm just going to go ahead and get those items deleted. But I'm going to continue forward. And like I said, just wanted to point out all the different details that does pop in once you use that import data feature. Great. Let me delete one more. There we go. And we'll move on now to the forms. There are several forms that have been added in. You can always add more forms later. So don't feel like that you have to try to figure out every single form that you're going to need at the very beginning there. You can always go back and add more later. Documents, as we go through our processes here, one thing I do want to note, some of these documents weren't there before. That's because when I use that import data feature, it automatically added several of those documents on there for me. So that's another great detail about that import feature. Also, once we jump to AuthentiSign here in a second, all of our AuthentiSign items are also going to appear under the documents menu a little bit later. So every single item that we have that goes through AuthentiSign, those completed items are going to appear here in documents a little bit later. checklist here, keeping track of your daily tasks. You can keep track of everything from what documents you need to turn into what action items that need to be performed. So easy way to be able to keep track of your day-to-day. Task items, if you want to just stick to just task items, such as making sure that you have all your action items put together, that's fantastic. You can add those here under task. Call logs, if you want to keep track of conversations with your client, especially if you're working with a team or a co-lister or a co-seller, always a good idea to add in those those different conversations you've had with the client. And then history, just keeping track of the different changes you've made. We also have different closing services, and we connect with different services outside of TransactionDesk. So if you use Rent Spree or Utility Concierge or Updater, we do connect with quite a few other services as well. Essentially, if you want to connect it, you can send your transaction details more quickly over for like tenant screening. You can send it more quickly over so that you can get your tenant screening done faster. Okay, so those are just some of the additional options if needed to get connected within TransactionDesk. Well, let's go ahead and move into Authentisign then. And Authentisign is one of those things that even if you've used it 100 times, there is always something amazing to learn within Authentisign, making it so you can get your e-signature packets created. So real quick, really down to basics, make sure before you fill out your packet that you have filled out the details section to the best of your ability. Like I'm going to add in a purchase price here. Make sure that you've included your contacts. If you ever move out of it without making saving the changes, you just push yes, save those changes. Make sure you have your contacts added. Make sure you've included your forms. And then make sure you've included your documents. After you've put all that together, we can now go ahead and start filling out our forms. To do that, we are going to head here to the Forms section and go into our Forms Editor. Our Forms Editor it's going to have these nice blue areas for you to be able to get filled in with the details. So make sure and fill out every single blue area that's necessary. If this is the only thing that you needed signed, then you can go ahead and send it straight to Authentisign with the pen icon there at the top. Or if you have multiple forms you're going to get filled out, go ahead and select that Save and Exit. And so next, I'm going to move on to maybe the property inspection or the purchase, the continuation of purchase and sale contract. I just very quickly grabbed a couple of forms there, so I know yours may look a little bit different. But again, you're going to be able to come in and add in items. Something else that you can do, you can create your own library of clauses. So instead of having to sit there and type out everything that goes into a clause, there is a section on the left-hand side called Clauses, where you can actually create clauses and make it so that you can access those clauses at any time. Also, your association has clauses available. So when you click into an area like this, you can push plus add clause, go to System Clauses, where you're going to be able to have all these different clauses already put together. So your association has even already created several clauses for you. So again, we're going to get these blue areas filled in to the best of our ability. There may be times that you need some help from the seller or buyer to get some of these areas filled in, these blue areas. Not with this particular form, but with other forms. So under File, I could send this out as an email for my client to take a look at it to be able to assist me. So if I wanted, I could click a check mark here. You can even allow your client to edit the forms, but this is not for signature. I want to be clear on here. This is just to get some assistance on the client side for them to take a look at it, make sure that everything is check marked, especially when you're taking down personal information, histories of properties that they've been at in the past, or even sometimes taking down things as simple as their phone number sometimes can easily miss a digit there. So you can send an email allowing them to edit the forms. Once the form is edited, then you're going to send it out for signing, okay? But wanted to make sure and be clear on that. You can send that out, but this isn't where you send it for signature. This is just to get a little bit of help from the client, making sure that everything has been filled in properly and allowing them the chance to even be able to fill in some items themselves if there is something that's missing. You can adjust your font if you want to. You can also add a watermark if you're going to print this out as a draft for a client. You can remove that watermark at any time. And then this is where you can print as well. If you have a client that prefers to have paper in hand, totally understand. That's where they can find that as well. The document section, usually if you're going to be using Authentisign, the only thing that you need to do with the document section is to be able to add the documents in here. But there are some additional items that are available within documents, especially if you have a client that wants to sign everything with pen to paper, okay? If you have a client, they just want to use a pen, I understand. In that circumstance, you can click into a document and use the markup tool to be able to add text onto documents. So if there is a particular section that you need to get filled in, I'm going to grab this educational example here real quick. If there's a section that needs to be filled out, you could use text font to be able to get that added in. You can also highlight particular portions if you need to as well onto your document. One question I get consistently, what if I'm sent a packet of multiple documents all bundled into one thing, and I want to split it apart into several different documents? Get that question all the time. So I have an addendum and I have an inspection waiver that I've added in. Again, these are just an educational example. And in that circumstance, I'm going to use what's called the slicer tool. The slicer tool is going to allow me to be able to get this sliced up into the different portions that I want to be able to see in the system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the pages that I do not want to include in my first document. I select the ones I don't want to include. I then hit delete. Stick with me, okay? I'm going to hit that remove pages. I'm then going to save this as a brand new document. So I'm going to call that my addendum, and I will hit save. And then when leaving this, do not save the changes. Why did I do that? Because now I have my original with all the pages put together, and now I have my brand new file that's been separated out from all those original pages. Let's do that one more time. So I'm going to select the original. I'm going to go to the slicer tool here. I'm going to select the pages I do not want to include and push remove pages. I then am going to select save, and I'm going to save this as a brand new file. And when I hit close here, I'm not going to save the original. I'm going to leave the original as it was. And now I have my separated out pages, my inspection waiver and my addendum. And I also have my original here with all the documents combined. So a couple steps there, but it makes it so you can slice everything out into multiple documents if you need. Let's get these items signed. I know everybody's itching. You're like, okay, we got it. It's put together. Let's get this signed, right? So I'm going to go here to signings. I'm going to hit the plus add. I'm going to name it. Oh, that's my example one today. I know that's very creative naming. Whatever you name the signing is going to be the name of the email subject that's sent out. So just keep that in mind. You want to name it something that is easy for you to know what it is, easy for the client to know what it is. If you don't like the name, you can always come up here to the top to edit the name, by the way. So it's right here at the very top of the page. Now that we're in Authentisign, we're just going to go step by step according to the toolbar. We're going to start here with signers, and we're just going to work our way down. So first, I'm going to add in my desired participants, and I'm just going to pull them from the transaction. So I got Mr. and Mrs. Buyer here. I'm then going to choose, are they a remote signer? Do they need to perform an action of some kind? Initials, checkmark box, sign something. That's a remote signer. A reviewer is going to be somebody that just needs to either approve it or mark it as not approved. So if you have a client that has, maybe they have an attorney contact that they're working with, and they just need to make sure that attorney takes a look at it, that's where the reviewer comes in, and they will be able to approve it or not approve it. And then CC, carbon copy, That just makes it so somebody's going to get a copy of this once everything's done, okay? Next, once I hit select, I'll have my contacts. You're going to notice I didn't add in myself as a real estate agent. Stick with me. I'm going to show you why here in just a second, okay? Right now, everybody is going to get this at the same time. So if I send this out to my client, they're both just going to get it. They're both going to get an email. By the way, you'll notice both have the same email address as well. So if you have a couple that shares an email address, perfectly okay. They just need to be careful when they're signing it that they're signing the right one. And one thing that you can do in a circumstance like that is add a signing pin to make it so that they don't accidentally sign for each other. A signing pin is just a specialized password. This is also helpful if you have a client that is feeling a little trepidatious about using eSign. And sometimes they may go, okay, I'm not sure if I want to use electronic signatures. Is it secure? That's where that signing pin can come in, where you can add in an extra layer of security. You can also set the signing order if this needs to go out in a particular way. So right now I have this set up under Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. So it's going to go to Mr. Buyer first, and then it'll go to Mrs. Buyer next. For me, in my house, my wife prefers that my Mrs. Ashley there, she prefers that I fill out the forms. If I am filling out the disclosures, she wants to make sure after I fill it all out, she just wants to double check me. She's my life editor. She comes in and makes sure that everything is in order. I totally understand. I love it. That's kind of our roles in this house. And so we would set this up where she would be second and I would be first because she would want to see it after everything's been filled in. But you don't have to do it that way. It's just your preference. It's the preference of the client in that circumstance. If you forgot to include somebody on your transaction, you can always add new or pull them from contacts as well, if it's someone you've worked with in the past. So now that we have some signers, let's go ahead and add in our documents and forms. And we can do that in two places. Under Docs, I can click on Add a Doc or Form, or I can click on it right here as well. I'm just going to go ahead and select. And I'm going to choose what documents and forms I want to include. I am grabbing a couple just random items. I know these are probably not going to be the forms that you would be using in this circumstance. Or maybe all of these forms are forms that you may use at some point, at least during the process. You'll notice the moment I add in the form, it'll automatically add signature items. It may even add places to be able to include information, these blue selectable items here to be able to add text. And you'll notice here, same thing. It still has those amazing blue areas to be able to adjust the text. And it has those signature fields for you. That's going to be with my forms. So I have my two forms here at the top. My last item is my document. So this is something that it's my educational example, but we're going to pretend in this circumstance like it came from the association, came from the MLS, where I need to get it filled in. I have to have my buyers sign that lead-based paint disclosure, right? Or whatever disclosure it might be. But the problem is the signature is currently not on the disclosure. Here in a second, we're going to get that added in. So that's the difference between a document and a form. Documents are not going to automatically add those items in, while a form will automatically add not only details about the lister, about your contacts and the listing itself, but it's also going to add in signature fields. It's also going to add in fields for your buyers and sellers to be able to get filled in. You could decide the order using these 6 little dots. You can even click in to make adjustments. So if I need to replace the file, maybe I accidentally added the wrong file. Not a problem. I can replace it. I can even remove it. You can also select particular pages to delete them if you want. So if you have a circumstance where, for whatever reason, there are pages that do not need to be included, you can always select them to be able to get deleted. Let's talk about these tools. There's quite a few different tools that you can use to make it so that you can add items such as signatures and initials and signing fields and even mark up the documents and forms. All right, let's talk about the different tools that are now available. So with markup, I can use text boxes to be able to add text anywhere that I need onto the transaction. You can even use it as a little bit of a whiteout tool. You listers out there that have accidentally added something that's incorrect, you could actually use this as a bit of a whiteout tool as well. So like this one should be 123 training lane there at the top, right? Of course, you never want to do that for something that's already been signed. I'm just talking about something that hasn't been signed just yet, where you're just needing to fix something that's on there, okay? Just wanted to be very clear on that too. Next, we have signing fields. This is going to be things like adding their name and their email address. Now, I could do this one person at a time where I go to Mr. Buyer and then I go to Mrs. Buyer and do each item. Or we have this really fantastic tool called All Signers. And with All Signers, when I push full name, it's going to add both of their names at the same time. When I hit email address, it'll add both their email addresses. If I push sign here, it's going to add both of their signatures. And then I just need to drag and drop exactly where they need to go. So now I can have it all available for every single person at the same time. It's an easy way to be able to get that added in. If you need to sign something yourself, we have another tool called Myself. Hopefully nobody thinks I'm calling myself a tool today. It's just a really great feature here. I'm waking a couple people up. You're like, I needed the laugh, right? So with Myself, it's going to allow me to pre-sign my documents and forms before sending it out. So if I click on sign here, accept the terms and conditions, I then need to create a signature. Don't worry, Jennifer, not going to sign anything for you. Just showing how to use the feature real quick. But you can use a style. You can draw one, which I'm not even going to attempt that. I don't want it to look like Jennifer's signature is in crayon. You can also upload a signature if you'd like as well. So you can click set signature and then drag it exactly where it needs to go, okay? Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and delete that, but just showing how you can pre-sign items. You don't have to have them emailed to you to get them signed. You can actually pre-sign it before sending it out. Under each person individually, you do have more features available, including the radio choice option. The radio choice option is going to force the user to pick between two options. So I'm just going to use this right here as an example. If I have a seller filling this out, they either know that there's lead-based paint or they have no knowledge of lead-based paint, okay? There's only two options. There's no, well, I had a lead a lead pencil there at one time. Does that count? They're either they have knowledge of it or they don't have knowledge of it, okay? And so that's where radio choice option shines because it's going to force the person to pick one out of multiple options. And you can add more than two options if this is a question with 4 or 5 options, but it's forcing the user to pick one of those options. In the circumstance, on the other hand, where it is a choice and not a forced on there, we have checkmark boxes. A checkmark box initially is going to be a forced item. You see how it's got a red square, red star? That shows it's required. And so if you do need the buyer, you're like, hey, I really need you to checkmark this. You could leave it as an item that they don't have a choice. They have to checkmark it to complete the signing. Or you can click on it to turn off the requirement. By the way, you can also click on it to scale it or delete it too. But this makes it now so it's optional. My client has the choice to select it instead of forcing them, making it a required item. You can also copy and paste this. So if it's a circumstance where you have multiple choice that they need to choose multiple items in, you can also copy and paste checkmark boxes as well. So radio choice is multiple choice and they have to pick one option. A checkmark box is either a forced choice of one. They don't have a choice. They have a forced item they have to select, or it's a non-required multiple choice on there. So that's the difference. Checkmark box versus radio choice option. All right, so we got our signers put together. We've added the items. Text line. Let me mention this real quick. Lots of questions about text line. If you have something where the person needs to add text of their own, that's where a text line comes in. And you can make this bigger or smaller, which is going to make the text, the font in there bigger and smaller as well. So If I make it taller, font's bigger. If I make it shorter, font is smaller. That's where the client is adding text. So I went through this process. I've added in the signatures. I've added in the checkmark boxes. And I talked about earlier that there is one way to do this that's going to work every single time when it comes to your documents, because you may not want to have to go through this process of dragging and dropping items in every single time. And that's where layouts really shines. A layout is going to make it so that your document can automatically add these items in after you have created it the first time. So the very first time you do have to add in everything and drag it and drop it. Then you're going to click Create Layout. By the way, if you're going to do this, but create a layout, I would do it when you have 2 sellers. You could also create a fake transaction and come in here and add these items in under a fake transaction. You don't have to have a real transaction to get this created. So once you create the layout, what's going to happen is that the next time that you use this document, even if it's on a completely separate transaction, it doesn't have to be the same transaction. All you have to do is go to Layouts, Apply Layout, and choose the layout you created. It's then going to populate all the different sections onto that document for you, saving you quite a bit of time and effort, especially if you're going through, if you're a lister and you have a purchase contract that's been received. There's usually a lot of sections there that you have to get filled in with initials and signatures. So use the layout feature to automatically add all those signature fields, all the name blocks and everything on there. And you can do that. You're going to do that with your documents. Your forms are going to automatically have those items on there. But with the document that you've uploaded, a PDF or Word document, you can create a layout that can be used on all transactions going forward. All right, let's get this sent. We're rounding out to the end here. We'll go ahead and select Next. I can set an expiration date. I can have a customized message in there if I wanted to in the email. Let's go ahead and get this sent. Once you have an item sent, you can keep track of it by either hovering here, or you can click on it to be able to keep track of it. You can even change the email address. So if the email I sent to the client was incorrect email, I don't have to reset it or delete it. I can just change that right here. I can also resend it if they're just not seeing the initial email that was sent out. I can go to More here to be able to reset it. So if I made a mistake, I added in the wrong address, I added in the wrong name on there, I can reset it, adjust it, and then resend it out. It'll send us a brand new email, by the way. That's how that reset works. You can also delete it if you need as well. The email is going to look just like this for the client, and they're going to be able to start signing. And then once everything is complete, it's going to look like this, and they're going to be able to get all the different paperwork easily downloaded. They're going to have their own items here. Quick tip here. I see a lot of people make this mistake. Do not forward the signing complete email to someone else. This is only for your email. The security feature within it is that it's not going to work unless it's the email that actually received it when you're clicking on these links here, okay? So don't forward this email. If you want to forward this over, the completed items, to someone, in TransactionDesk, you can go to More Options and use the Forward Documents to forward that completed packet to someone. Don't forward the email itself, okay? Because it's not going to work for somebody else. That's the full process. Getting your transaction created, you got Authentisign, getting your signatures on there, making sure your client is all good to go, and making it so your listings can get out there more quickly, or your offers can get it sent in even quicker than what you've ever been able to do before. So all the different transaction features here. A template is going to make it so that you can have some forms automatically appear. And those forms you can actually have pre-filled out with the broker's ID. So I'm just going to grab a couple items real quick. So I can actually pre-fill out this form. You're not going to add your sellers and your buyers, but things like your broker's ID, like your listing broker, selling broker, I can go ahead and get those items added in. so that they will automatically appear when I use the template to create my transaction. So a template, left-hand side here, transaction templates. This makes it so you can have particular forms of documents auto appear on a transaction. So there was a buyer's one that was created in the past here. I just go in and I add in those forms. And then on the form itself, like this administration form, I go ahead and pre-fill out those sections that I want pre-filled out. And then when I create my transaction, I just make sure and choose the template so that it'll automatically add those forms in. A little bit of an advanced feature, but again, it's going to save you a lot of time. If you've noticed, there's one line that I keep saying throughout the entire session here, and it's true everywhere you go in the program. This is all about saving you time and effort, and templates is an amazing way to save you quite a bit of time. You got to do that initial setup, but after that initial setup there, it's going to make it so you can get your transactions done very quickly. Already have those forms in there, already have those documents in there, and even have them pre-filled out with things like your broker's information. So you may have an initial, let's say you're creating a list side transaction, okay? So in the beginning, you just have your pre-list forms that needs to get filled out. It's going to be, your disclosures and your lead-based paint, things like that, right? So initially, when you create the transaction, you can have just that template apply. And then later on, once you have the contract come in, it's going to be a different set of forms, right? And so in that circumstance, you can head here to the menu and apply the template, and you can apply another template on top of the transaction itself. You do have to do it this way once you're applying a second template on top of it. Though I would say for the circumstance I'm giving, this is just an organizational item here. So some people prefer to split everything up into multiple templates. Under the template icon here, you can also put everything together into particular folders as well. The forms are all going to be together, but you could have items in particular folders. You can also, if you like checklists, you can add multiple checklists, separate checklists, one being for pre-list and the other being for under contract. So in that circumstance, it's up to what you prefer to do. Do you want to have everything in two separate templates, like a pre-list template and then an under contract template? Or would you just like to have everything under one template initially? The benefit of doing it the first way is that you don't have all of your forms already in there, every single form you're going to be able to use. The only non-benefit of not doing it the benefit of doing it the second way is that you would already have your folders and your checklists and everything already in there, so you don't have to worry about applying that second template later. So templates, it's a really great organizational tool. If anybody is working in an office account where you are connected with quite a few different agents, you can also use templates to help you with your review processes as well. So just throwing that out there for anybody that is working with several different agents connected to their account. Let me show you one more tool that's going to really save you some time too. You remember I talked about layouts earlier? If you head here to signings, you can actually create layouts beforehand. Just select the little pancake here. Right here is layouts. And I can actually start creating my layouts right here as well. So you don't have to have a transaction to create layouts. I was using that example of creating a test transaction earlier just because it is a good idea if you're just getting started to learn how to use the system to create a test. But you can also create layouts where it automatically has everything already filled in for those documents. So that's going to be, again, under signings, the pancakes here, and it says layouts right there. Something else, question that comes up in time, print driver. That's kind of an interesting thing that some people like to use. This documents print driver. Essentially, you can have items, quote unquote, print into TransactionDesk. So when you are selecting a document, excuse me, and you're selecting the print option, you can select TransactionDesk as the print option if you wanted to. This is a very advanced feature. I'm showing it because some of you on the call have been using TransactionDesk for a number of years. And so for you, you're like, okay, everything you went through today, I need something new, right? So that's where this print driver comes in. It'll just automatically appear in your inbox in the document section, okay? So just throwing an advanced feature out there for everybody that has been using the program for quite some time. Don't forget to turn on your notifications in the system if you haven't. Person icon settings here. So that's where the notifications comes in. If you want to add in some property types under type management, you can add in additional property types. You can add additional contact types, even document types as well, if you wanted to. That's going to be found under type management. You can also create clauses here if you'd like, or just go to clauses on the left-hand side. If you work with a team of some kind, you can create your teams right here. All right, let's talk about help resources. So you got the light bulb here, which does take you to our Knowledge Center, or we have the question mark here in the top right-hand side. So the question mark is going to have the phone number and email address for our support team. They are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They would love to help with anything at all that may come up along the way. And we actually have people out of the US and Canada. You might hear a couple A's in there, a couple Canadian accents. That's probably not so different for you guys in Rochester, right? Canada isn't that far away. So we do have some Canadians and Americans answering the calls. Online training, if you want to dig further into the program, you want to learn more about Authentisign, or you want to learn about more about what the features are within the system, we do have all kinds of full-length webinars that cover every topic that you might need to get into the program. Things like creating a rental transaction, getting Authentisign layouts in order. So lots of great features there. We also have guides. These are written out portions. So some of you, you're going to say to me like, hey, John, I really need a written item to take me through getting started or getting a transaction created. That's where these guides come in handy, because not only are there videos, there are articles that will walk you through the basic steps of using the program. And then, certainly not last, and not least either, help videos. These are short length content, right to the point. I went through a lot today. I know some of you are like, I am so glad this was recorded. Trying to drink out of a fire hose. I know that is tough. In this circumstance, though, I do want to point out we have those short length videos as well. But don't feel like you have to just sit there overwhelmed. No, we have those short length video content so that you can make sure and feel completely comfortable with the system, okay? So don't feel like you're going to be overwhelmed there. We have that short length video content so that you can come in and be able to feel very, very happy and connected to the system, learn everything very quickly, okay? And it has all kinds of topics here. Let me just finish out here. You all have been amazing. This little QR code right here, and I'm going to add a link to the chat box. This is just feedback for me. So if you want to provide some feedback about today's session, would really appreciate it. I love to see the feedback so that and my manager does too, so that we can make sure and make this class the best it could possibly be.